Most men move through the world in a state of quiet domestication. They are not dangerous, not unpredictable, not formidable. They have traded their instincts for approval and their edge for comfort. Their days are governed by an unspoken contract: behave politely, avoid conflict, and seek validation from the crowd. In exchange, society grants them a fragile sense of belonging. Yet this bargain carries a hidden cost. The cost is power. The cost is autonomy. The cost is the slow erosion of a man's natural authority over his own life. When such a man enters a room, nothing shifts. The atmosphere remains exactly as it was before his arrival. Conversations continue uninterrupted. Opinions pass over him like wind over grass. He speaks, and people talk over him without hesitation. He expresses anger, and others dismiss it with a laugh. His presence leaves no imprint because he has been trained to smooth every edge of himself until nothing sharp remains. But occasionally, a different kind of figure appears. You have seen this presence before, even if you could not immediately explain it. A man who does not demand attention, yet somehow commands it. A man whose silence weighs more than the words of others. When he steps into a chaotic environment, the chaos subtly reorganizes itself. Conversations slow. Eyes turn, not out of admiration alone, but from something more primal and instinctive. It is not simply respect. It is recognition of power that does not need to advertise itself. This presence does not come from shouting louder or displaying aggression. It emerges from a deeper transformation of character, a shift in how a man sees himself and the world around him. The philosophy behind this transformation is ancient. It begins with a brutal observation about human nature. In a competitive and often unforgiving world, passivity is rarely rewarded. To exist only as a harmless participant in the social order is to surrender influence over the direction of one's own life. A person who cannot be feared in any capacity, who cannot set boundaries, who cannot enforce consequences, becomes vulnerable to exploitation by those who possess stronger wills. History repeatedly demonstrates that power does not gravitate toward the passive. It gravitates toward those who understand strategy, perception, and control. If you find yourself drawn to these ideas, it may be because something inside you has begun to change. Many men reach a moment where the identity they once performed no longer feels sustainable. The agreeable persona, the constant politeness, the endless attempts to earn approval from others begin to feel exhausting. There is a quiet realization that playing the role of the endlessly accommodating individual has not produced the respect or autonomy that was promised. Instead, it has created a pattern in which others assume your compliance. The transformation begins when that pattern breaks. Before exploring this shift in detail, one clarification must be made. When we speak of becoming dangerous, the term is not meant to imply uncontrolled aggression or violence. True danger does not resemble chaos. It resembles contained force. Imagine an iceberg drifting silently through cold water. Only a small fraction of its mass is visible above the surface, yet beneath the waves lies an immense structure capable of altering the course of ships far larger than itself. The iceberg does not shout, threaten, or perform for attention. Its presence alone changes the calculations of those who encounter it. A dangerous man operates in a similar way. He cannot be easily manipulated because he does not surrender control of his emotions or values to the expectations of others. Attempts to shame him into compliance fail because his sense of identity is internally defined. Attempts to guilt him into sacrificing his time or energy fail because he recognizes the worth of those resources. Such a man understands his own boundaries with surgical clarity. And because of that clarity, his presence alters the dynamics of every room he enters. This transformation often feels unsettling in its early stages. As the old identity dissolves, there may be moments of doubt. You might question whether becoming more detached, more disciplined, and less accommodating means losing your humanity. Yet what is actually occurring is the dismantling of a false framework that once governed your behavior. The version of yourself that existed purely to please others begins to fade. In its place emerges something sharper and more deliberate. The first unmistakable sign of this shift is the death of the compulsive need to be liked. For years, many men operate under the assumption that kindness alone guarantees respect. They are taught that if they remain polite, agreeable, and endlessly accommodating, the world will reward them with loyalty and admiration. But observation eventually reveals a harsher reality. Kindness that stems from fear of conflict is not perceived as strength. It is perceived as weakness. When generosity is offered without boundaries, it often becomes an invitation for exploitation. The realization arrives slowly. You begin to notice patterns in your past interactions. Moments when your willingness to help was taken for granted. Times when your loyalty was met not with gratitude, but with indifference. Situations where you compromised your own priorities in order to avoid disappointing someone, only to discover that the sacrifice was barely acknowledged. Each experience contributes to a growing understanding that approval cannot be the foundation of self-respect. The transition begins when the word no gains weight. In the past, declining a request required elaborate explanations. You softened every refusal with excuses designed to protect the other person's feelings. Now the response becomes simple and direct. No apologies. No fabricated stories. Just a calm refusal when something does not align with your priorities. This shift unsettles people who previously benefited from your compliance. They interpret the change as coldness or arrogance because they were accustomed to a version of you that placed their comfort above your autonomy. In reality, what is emerging is strategic honesty. Hard conversations occur earlier instead of being avoided until resentment builds. Relationships that drain your energy begin to fade as you redirect attention toward goals that actually matter. The process may appear ruthless from the outside, but internally it is driven by clarity rather than hostility. The objective is not to harm others. The objective is to protect the integrity of your time, focus, and purpose. As this transformation continues, another change becomes visible: emotional neutrality in situations that once triggered immediate reactions. The average individual operates as a bundle of exposed nerves, responding instantly to every stimulus. A minor inconvenience produces anger. A critical comment produces anxiety. A rejection produces despair. Life becomes a series of emotional swings dictated by external events. A disciplined mind functions differently. Between stimulus and response, a pause emerges. In that pause lies power. Instead of reacting impulsively, the situation is observed. Information is gathered. Intentions behind other people's actions become clearer. Emotions are acknowledged but not allowed to dictate behavior. They become signals rather than commands. This emotional zero point is one of the most powerful psychological advantages a person can develop. When someone attempts to provoke you and receives no reaction, their strategy collapses. Manipulative individuals rely on predictable emotional responses. They push certain buttons because they expect certain outcomes. Remove the reaction, and the manipulation loses its leverage. The result is a new form of composure that others often misinterpret. Some will assume indifference because you no longer perform emotional displays for every minor conflict. In truth, the opposite is happening. You are paying closer attention than ever before. But instead of being swept away by every emotional current, you stand on solid ground, watching the flow of events with deliberate awareness. This level of self-control is not the absence of feeling. It is mastery over feeling. And once that mastery begins to solidify, the world itself starts to look different. As emotional discipline strengthens, another profound transformation takes place. The structures of authority that once seemed unquestionable begin to lose their mystique. Throughout childhood and early adulthood, many people construct mental pedestals for the figures they admire. Parents appear all-knowing. Leaders appear decisive and visionary. Public figures appear larger than life. Even romantic interests can be elevated to a level of almost mythical importance. This psychological elevation serves a purpose during early development. It provides guidance, aspiration, and direction. But eventually reality reveals something more complicated. The individuals who once seemed flawless reveal their contradictions. The leader admired for confidence may also display insecurity. The mentor admired for wisdom may also possess blind spots. The admired figure who appeared extraordinary may turn out to be navigating life with the same uncertainty as everyone else. This realization can initially feel unsettling. When illusions collapse, the world appears less magical. Yet something more valuable replaces that illusion: clarity. When you stop perceiving others as untouchable authorities, you begin to interact with them as equals in a strategic environment. You recognize that everyone is driven by incentives, fears, and desires. Even those who appear powerful are responding to pressures and limitations that shape their decisions. Once the pedestal disappears, negotiation becomes possible. You are no longer intimidated by titles or reputations. You analyze leverage instead of status. You observe patterns of behavior instead of assuming inherent superiority. In practical terms, this means you stop surrendering your voice in conversations with those who hold formal authority. Instead of reacting like a subordinate seeking approval, you operate like a strategist evaluating the situation. This perspective extends into personal relationships as well. When someone is placed on a pedestal, genuine interaction becomes impossible. One person performs admiration while the other enjoys elevated status. Authenticity disappears because the admirer constantly filters their behavior to maintain approval. Removing the pedestal restores balance. Respect remains, but it is grounded in reality rather than idealization. Paradoxically, this grounded respect often creates stronger relationships. When you interact with others without desperation for their validation, your behavior becomes more natural and confident. You express opinions honestly. You challenge ideas when necessary. You demonstrate independence rather than dependency. This independence signals strength, and strength commands attention in ways that constant approval-seeking never can. Another transformation begins to unfold alongside this shift in perception. Communication becomes more deliberate. In an era where nearly every thought is broadcast instantly to a digital audience, restraint becomes a rare and powerful trait. Most people reveal their plans before they are even partially formed. They share every frustration, every success, every passing emotion with a network of observers. The result is a constant stream of noise. A disciplined individual gradually withdraws from this noise. Words become selective. Personal plans remain private until they are already in motion. Achievements speak for themselves rather than being announced prematurely. This deliberate silence creates a curious effect on those around you. When information is scarce, curiosity increases. People speculate about what you might be doing, what you might be thinking, and what direction your life might be moving. Silence functions as a strategic advantage because it prevents others from predicting your actions. When every intention is publicly declared, opposition can prepare responses in advance. When plans remain internal until execution begins, momentum builds before anyone else realizes what is happening. The difference between these two approaches often determines whether an idea succeeds or dissolves under external pressure. This principle applies equally to emotional vulnerability. Sharing experiences with trusted individuals can be healthy and constructive. But broadcasting every struggle to a wide audience often weakens your position. The world does not automatically reward transparency. In competitive environments, information can be used strategically by those who receive it. The disciplined mind recognizes this reality and chooses carefully when and where to reveal personal details. Through silence, observation deepens. You begin to notice patterns in conversations that were previously invisible. You recognize who dominates discussions, who deflects responsibility, who seeks validation, and who quietly directs outcomes from behind the scenes. By speaking less, you gather more information than those who constantly fill the air with words. Alongside these psychological shifts, a more physical transformation frequently occurs. Many men reach a moment where they confront an uncomfortable truth about their own capabilities. If a genuine confrontation occurred, whether physical or psychological, would they possess the strength to defend their boundaries? For years, society encouraged the suppression of aggression in the name of civility. While restraint is valuable, complete detachment from one's own capacity for force creates vulnerability. The disciplined individual begins to explore this dimension of personal power in a controlled and constructive way. Physical training becomes more than an aesthetic pursuit. Strength, endurance, and skill are developed with the understanding that the body is an instrument of protection and capability. Combat disciplines, intense physical conditioning, and rigorous routines serve a psychological purpose beyond fitness. They cultivate confidence rooted in competence. When a man knows that he possesses the physical ability to defend himself if necessary, his demeanor changes dramatically. Paradoxically, aggression decreases rather than increases. The need to posture disappears because the underlying capability already exists. Calm replaces insecurity. Patience replaces reactive hostility. True strength often expresses itself through restraint. Integrating this capacity requires confronting the darker aspects of human nature rather than pretending they do not exist. Anger, pride, and ambition are frequently portrayed as flaws that must be eliminated. Yet these impulses also contain tremendous energy. When channeled constructively, they fuel discipline, creativity, and persistence. Instead of suppressing them entirely, the disciplined mind learns to direct them toward meaningful goals. This process resembles training a powerful animal. Untamed aggression can be destructive. But controlled aggression becomes a force that drives progress. The same energy that might once have fueled resentment or conflict can instead power relentless work, focused ambition, and unwavering standards of excellence. Once emotional discipline, clarity of perception, and controlled strength begin to integrate, the way you evaluate time undergoes a radical change. The average person treats time as an endless resource. Hours disappear into distractions without much reflection. Endless streams of entertainment consume attention that could otherwise build skills or deepen understanding. Days blend into weeks, and weeks dissolve into years without any deliberate structure guiding them. A strategic mind refuses to allow this drift. Every commitment begins to pass through a filter of value. Does this activity strengthen your abilities, expand your knowledge, or advance your objectives? Or does it simply provide temporary stimulation while quietly draining energy that could be invested elsewhere? The answer to that question determines whether the activity remains part of your routine. This form of ruthless prioritization often surprises those around you. Invitations that once seemed automatic are declined. Conversations that revolve around trivial complaints or gossip lose their appeal. Time once spent consuming endless streams of news or entertainment becomes redirected towards skill development, physical training, reading, planning, and building projects that carry long-term significance. To observers who remain attached to constant distraction, this shift may appear obsessive or extreme. They interpret discipline as deprivation because they measure fulfillment primarily through comfort and entertainment. But the disciplined individual experiences a different form of satisfaction. Progress itself becomes rewarding. Watching abilities compound over months and years produces a deeper sense of achievement than passive consumption ever could. The cumulative effect of this focus can be dramatic. Skills sharpen at a pace that seems almost impossible to those who remain scattered. Knowledge deepens because attention is concentrated rather than diluted. Opportunities appear more frequently because preparation allows you to recognize them quickly. The gap between focused individuals and distracted individuals widens steadily over time. Yet this path carries an inevitable consequence that many people underestimate. As priorities shift and distractions fall away, solitude becomes more common. Social circles built around convenience or entertainment gradually dissolve because shared interests disappear. The disciplined individual spends increasing amounts of time alone, not out of bitterness, but out of necessity. Serious work often requires uninterrupted concentration. At first, this solitude can feel unfamiliar. Humans are naturally social creatures, and stepping away from constant interaction may create moments of uncertainty. But over time the quiet reveals unexpected benefits. In silence, thoughts organize themselves more clearly. Ideas that remain hidden beneath constant noise begin to surface. Personal values become easier to identify when external opinions are no longer dominating every moment. Solitude also strengthens independence. When you become comfortable spending time alone, the fear of social rejection loses its power. Many people tolerate unhealthy environments or relationships simply because they dread isolation. But once solitude becomes manageable, that fear dissolves. Decisions can be made based on principle rather than on the need to maintain approval from a group. This independence creates a remarkable form of freedom. Social pressure relies heavily on the threat of exclusion. Conform to the expectations of the group, or risk being pushed outside of it. But a person who is already comfortable standing alone cannot be controlled through that threat. Their actions are guided by internal standards rather than by the shifting preferences of the crowd. Eventually, this independence evolves into something even more powerful: internal sovereignty. Instead of constantly measuring yourself against the expectations of others, you operate according to a personal framework of values and objectives. Relationships remain meaningful, but they no longer define your identity. You welcome connection, yet you remain stable even when circumstances change. However, there is a final dimension of this transformation that many people do not anticipate. Once you begin to analyze the world through the lens of strategy, power dynamics, and human psychology, the old innocence disappears permanently. You start noticing patterns everywhere. Conversations reveal hidden motives. Decisions reveal incentives. Conflicts reveal competing interests operating beneath polite language. This heightened awareness can feel like carrying a constant analytical lens. Situations that once seemed simple now reveal layers of complexity. While others react emotionally to surface events, you observe the underlying mechanisms driving those events. This perspective can occasionally create a sense of distance from the naive simplicity that once made life feel effortless. Yet the trade-off is profound capability. Awareness allows preparation. Preparation allows influence. Influence allows you to shape your own path rather than drifting according to external pressures. The loss of naive simplicity becomes the price paid for clarity. In the end, the transformation described here does not create cruelty or detachment from humanity. Its purpose is the opposite. A person who understands strength, discipline, and independence becomes capable of protecting what matters. They can support others without losing themselves. They can confront chaos without collapsing under its weight. The world does not improve through passive observers who surrender their agency. It improves through individuals who possess both clarity and courage. Men and women who recognize the complexity of human nature yet still choose to build, protect, and lead where necessary. The journey toward that level of personal authority is demanding. It requires abandoning comfortable illusions, confronting weaknesses honestly, and cultivating discipline over long periods of time. But those who complete the transformation discover something extraordinary waiting on the other side, a life directed not by fear or approval, but by deliberate intention.